We might have Royce Russell call in, the lawyer for Molly Graham. And we're going to talk more about what's been happening to, we've all been looking at these murderous cops and their, you know, what it is to be a young black man or old black man. They seem to be attacking us all. But this film, Breathing While Black, we're going to play another portion of this and we'll come right back at you. All right? Let's play the first portion of, well, the latter portion of Breathing While Black. Thank you. Boy.
In 2009, 17-year-old Victor Steen is seen riding on a bicycle. A Pensacola police officer claiming the boy, quote, looks suspicious, shoots him with a taser. The same officer then runs him over with his car. In 2010, 27-year-old Stephen Washington is shot down by Los Angeles cops. Police claim that this autistic man moved towards them in an aggressive way. No weapon is ever found. In 2011, Travis McNeil is killed by Miami police while sitting in his car during a traffic stop. He is unarmed, although police claim he made a threatening move. In all of these cases, no officer is charged. Also in 2011, White Plains police officers respond to the apartment of Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., where a minor error becomes a fatal mistake for the 68-year-old man. When White Plains police officers came to this housing complex on November 19th of 2011, they weren't responding to a call of a murder, an assault, or any kind of criminal activity. In fact, they were responding to a medical alert alarm, which meant the person making that call was in need of their assistance. The former U.S. Marine and Corrections officer informs police that the alarm was set off by accident and that he doesn't need their assistance. But instead of leaving, police begin to argue with Chamberlain, shouting racial slurs, and then inexplicably, they decide to force their way into Chamberlain's home.
He felt embattled and afraid. I mean, they stormed his home like they were storming a castle. When you look at the evidence in the videos, and you look at some of the weapons and the devices and the axes and the things that they had with them, you would have thought they were hunting down Al-Qaeda terrorists. They were going after a 68-year-old man in his home in his boxer shorts.
After breaking down the door, police officers immediately taser the elderly man. They then shoot him with powerful beanbag bullets. Still not satisfied that he's subdued, police strike one more blow. Officer Anthony Caselli shoots Ken Chamberlain in his side.
This takes it to a whole nother level. I mean, he's a 68-year-old man. Often these are young kids, and it's a difficult situation. It's a split moment to make a decision as to whether to save my life or take yours. This wasn't that kind of a case. They had an hour and a half to figure out what to do. There was absolutely no urgency to break that man's door down. And even after you broke his door down, there was no urgency to come in there and kill him. I doubt very seriously in one of the luxury high-rise apartment buildings in White Plains, they would have acted in that same fashion. But they knew where they were. They knew they were in a low-income housing development occupied predominantly by African Americans and Latinos. And they just didn't think he had any rights that they were bound to respect.
Police also claim self-defense, insisting that Chamberlain was swinging a kitchen knife. But the autopsy and videotape of the incident indicate that his arms were at his side when he was gunned down.
For each case, like a Trayvon Martin, for each Ramarley Graham, each Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., there are dozens, if not hundreds, of other cases that don't get attention because there is no witness who can state that that's not what really occurred.
You would expect when a black man is the President of the United States, a black man is the Attorney General of the United States of America, and a black woman is America's ambassador to the United Nations, you would expect to see far less of this type of unjustified violence.
It raises for me how incredibly racist our society is becoming. And I mean, it's been racist for a very long time, but it's coming to the fore. You know, when Martin Luther King walked through Cicero, and we see, and
Despite this trend, many still cling to the notion that Obama's overwhelming election victory is a new nexus in U.S. race relations. Others are not so willing to turn the page.
And he's gotten more death threats than any president in U.S. history. You see, I mean, the stop and frisk stuff in New York, disproportionately targeting black kids and Latino kids. The stand your ground law in Florida is racist and it's meant to target people of color.
But see, this is again,
is incredible right now.
you don't think just the fact that we have one person in that big job, I agree it is a big job, it doesn't mean that we're in a post-racial world, does it?
Would you at least acknowledge we have gotten less racist? That
No, I think we're getting more. I think it's getting more racist. I think the Tea Party plays into that.
I don't know.
I think the fact that we have a black president has brought out the racism in a lot of white people in this country.
I agree with
and they were keeping it in their pocket when Bush was in the White House. It's full-blown on the scene now.
While U.S. presidents have long been the targets of public
I am not a crook. My mother was a...
As you see, people are constantly attacking Obama for trying to make him incompetent. That's the way most people, America, looks at black people in particular. As you see, we have a black president, and racism just came out with no force. I mean, there was no doubt about it. They wonder why he can't do anything for black people. He can't do anything for anybody because they're 10 times as racist against him as they are every bad, ill feeling they have against Obama, they have against us.
Oh, absolutely.
And black people don't really realize it. I think suddenly he became president and always said, we reached the promised land. Like I say, it's a blessing from God, but it's also a curse because racism just come out in full bloom. And you found that to be true, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely. You know, when I talk with young people about what's happening in Ferguson, for example,
right.
And then when we hit home right here in New York and talk about the death of Eric Garner, right. And the fact that no police officer, the police officer responsible for his death has not been arrested. But we find young people being arrested for just standing in front of their own buildings, for not having ID, right. For, you know, very simplistic things, but there's no arrests in the death of Eric Garner. Same thing in the case of Ferguson, Michael Brown. And if that's not racist, I don't know what is. I mean, Cornel West was in Ferguson just protesting and was arrested. Just last week here in New York, there was a gentleman who just lent his voice in protest of an arrest of someone else, and they arrested him. So still we have no arrests of the police officers, and it's real clear. I mean, our young people have been watching all of this very closely here in New York, in Ferguson, and cases in California and Texas, particularly having to deal with with NYPD and unjust arrests and the unjust killings that have been happening across the country. This is not just a New York thing. You know, when you look across the country, just like you showed in the beginning of the show, that there have been shootings and murders of black men in particular across the country.
Did you notice in that they typed it out, but in June of 2012, they had 26 black men killed in 1 month?
That's insane, month of June.
That's almost one a day
I mean, what
across the country.
by police, mind you.
Right, but you'll hear police say, well, I don't see why you're so outraged when the police kill someone, meaning a black man, because black men are killing each other, as if black men killing each other, street violence, makes their violence, their killings justifiable.
Well,
you follow me?
But see, in their sick mind, that is true. Because if
because
you
they
don't
speak
respect yourself, how do you expect to get respect from them?
Yes,
Well,
but keep in mind, in all 28 of those cases, not one of those men had a weapon.
Right.
That was the key footnote.
Right.
Not one of them. They didn't have a gun. They didn't have a knife.
Right.
So what is causing the phobia that white police officers have? And this comes out, it's xenophobic. It is something that's not being pinpointed in psychological exams.
Right.
You have people coming into the New York City Police Department who have never talked or seen a black person in their life until they arrived in the academy.
Oh, absolutely.
That,
How do they pass the
that
psychological?
is not something see, we know what worked in the past compared to what's happening now.
But how about the
When-
last 6 years when we've had a black president in there?
It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. Barack Obama being black doesn't mean a thing. It has only caused the people in the closet to become more vociferous.
Right. That's what
And
it
they're
said.
now stepping out. They're coming out of the closet, and they're waving their banners. So if you can get away with disrespecting the president on every level, whether you're sitting in Congress calling him a liar,
Right.
or you're the guy on the street who runs onto the White House grounds and through the front door and up to the second floor before you're stopped. All right? Doesn't make any difference. The message is very clear. Dred Scott, there is no respect due a Negro that a white man has to honor. And we need to be very aware of where we are. We are in the United States of America. You are not in heaven. You are not in the promised land. You're in a country that was built and predicated upon racism and is
How do we
perpetuated
change
by
it? How do we change it?
You cannot.
How about the vote?
Well, I think it's bigger than the vote.
Well, we got
It's
a
bigger-
chance
it's
to
bigger
making
than,
things
than
change
voting
this.
because what happens in
On
the
November 5th, we got a chance to change this, don't we?
Well, I don't think that we should be as idealistic to expect that it's going to change because the politics changed. We thought that it would change because we had a black president. And what we saw, what we see, and coming forth is even more racism. What I think is that it does begin with us. We should not be the excuse for NYPD and other police across the country killing us. That's not what I'm saying. But
We need
do
to stop killing each other.
Absolutely. And we need to not have the crab in a barrel mentality.
Amen.
And I see
Amen.
this
That's
across
it.
the country
That's it.
in movements,
That's it.
in organizations,
That's our problem.
in churches, and
All
that
over the
we
place.
are not we don't have the kind of esteem that we need to have amongst each other. And I'm not talking about
family.
individual esteem. I'm talking about a communal
Family,
esteem
family.
so that we can see that there is value in each other and in building community and not look for whose name is going to be in the front and who can be better than the next one, but just how do we build to make things better and build better relationships within our own communities. And then outside of that is we have to constantly think about how we're spending our dollar.
Amen.
You know, if we're spending
Amen.
our dollar with companies that promote and support racism, and when I say that, I mean when they support a candidate through their financial backing and donations that supports racist policies and racist procedures and a racist police department. And if we know there's been a history, and I've heard those say that there's been a history with our current commissioner of racist policies within the police department. I just have to say it. It's, I mean,
Bill Bratton?
people have to build, right.
Yeah.
People
Is
have
that-
talked about that.
that no?
I'm not making this claim in particular. I've examined some things that are racist and that have transpired that were racist.
Is
But
he
that's
known?
been even in Kelly's time.
Well, Kelly,
but
we knew about.
what we have to do is not allow, we have to really stand up. We don't go to community board meetings. We're not at
There you go.
precinct council meetings. We barely get out to vote in our local elections when nominations and those kinds of things have to be made. We don't put enough pressure on the people who can make those nominations for commissioners and so forth. So we have to
My point
really
of
engage
bringing-
in a different kind of
My
way.
point about bringing up what's happening in November,
Mm-hmm.
all right? Now, we know that they're targeting Obama, which they're targeting us,
Mm-hmm.
all right? Now, we know if the Republicans get hold of the Senate, we are back at the bus slave days, and you believe they'll impeach Obama.
You're not even
and
on the
shame
bus.
him.
The bus is gone.
You know,
You won't even
what-
be in the back. The bus
The bus
left
left.
years ago.
I mean,
It
you
left
think it's
years ago.
rough now?
And another one's not coming.
I mean, we'll be out. I mean, look at Ferguson. Look at what they're doing. They have no regard for black people whatsoever.
No.
Now, if you think Obama can't do anything for us now, you wait till they get a Republican Senate. So I'm just saying, get out there and vote. I don't want to hear any nonsense about your vote don't count. Make sure it counts. Get out there and unite. This is a time as black people, we need to vote throughout the United States.
And not
Every
just
black
vote, but
man.
participate in the political process.
Yeah.
We have to be
Get
willing
involved.
from wherever people come from. We don't have to wait until someone has a doctorate degree to run for city council. That we have people who are leading
That's
in the
right.
communities that they're in and should take the initiative and we should support them in being leaders in the broader community. And that's not happening enough. So we need to make sure that we choose people from our community that can lead and take political office.
All too often, the issue of voting is so critical, and people don't understand the importance of it. There was a press conference just this afternoon. Brooklyn DA Ken Thompson is releasing another man who spent 27 years in prison for a murder that he did not commit. And Ken spoke.
Oh, I read that story.
Ken spoke to this afternoon in the press conference, and he talked about a corrupt DA,
Yeah.
Charles Hines. Charles Hines, who got in office on the back of a black man, following the murder in Howard Beach,
Is that right?
when Griffith was killed.
Michael Griffith.
Michael Griffith.
Right.
He got in office on Michael Griffith's back and stayed there. And you had a lot of black people that backed Hines, although his whole procedure, his whole operation, for the most part, was very prejudiced. He did community things and different programs and helping the community and whatnot.
Cover it up.
But that was the smokescreen. He and others, and I had to deal with Hines and some of his henchmen when I was a detective. And I truly told his homicide bureau chief that he was talking to the wrong person, because it was a homicide case, and he was trying to tell me who I can arrest, when I can. I said, I'm not a civilian. I don't work for you. I don't answer to you. I will effect this arrest. This is my investigation. It's not yours. And I had to have, at that time, Bill Bratton call the bureau chief, John Basunda, in the Brooklyn DA's office and tell him to prepare the paperwork I expected to have had earlier that day. And I told the bureau chief, in 45 minutes, you're going to get a call, and you're going to prepare the paperwork that I'm demanding that you prepare. Now, I got that paperwork. I got that paperwork. And there was a man in jail for a crime he didn't commit who was a witness to a homicide. But today, separately, Ken Thompson has this man. He's being released today after serving 27 years for, and this is why your voting is important.
That's right.
When you fail to vote, again, you get the commissioners you get the DAs you get.
Absolutely.
When you fail to vote. You're either voting for something or voting against something when you vote. And when you fail to go down and be part of the jury pool, to sit on the jury panel, to assess the information that's coming forth in that trial, or if you fail to maintain a backbone and cave in and allow somebody to go to prison when you don't believe they should be in prison, then you're part and you're duplicitous in the
That's
injustice
it.
against
That's
your
it.
own people.
That's it.
I'm not saying you let somebody off because they're black. You need to be sitting there to make that judgment call
Be fair.
as to whether or not that person is being handled fairly in court.
That's it.
Is the person representing that person competent? Do they even care? This is another issue. And I've discussed this with the Supreme Court justices in their conferences. They see things going on in the courtroom, and they know that the attorney representing that defendant is not competent, and they don't address it and speak up on behalf of the defendant. Get somebody else to come in here and defend this person. Judge Baines in Brooklyn, an attorney failed to show up in court for an incarcerated man. He was produced. The attorney didn't show up. Judge Bain demanded to know where the attorney was.
Right.
She sent a court officer to find that attorney and bring her to the courtroom. And he did. And she told that attorney, when you have a client who's incarcerated, I don't care what you have to do, you're supposed to be here because he's the one that's incarcerated.
Exactly.
Right.
You sit down there and I'll let you know when you can leave this court.
Amen. Amen.
That lawyer didn't like the idea that a black woman restrained her in that court. She complained to Giuliani. Giuliani took the judge off the bench.
Wow.
We got her back on the bench. How? Because we voted her back to the bench in the upcoming election.
The importance of voting, I mean, is just vital. Yeah, I think it's our entire future. If we don't vote this time around, I mean, you can't complain about anything. If you don't
absolutely.
vote, you can't complain about anything. You're part of the problem. So I hear a lot of people, oh, I won't vote. And this woman, Grimes, who won't own up to the fact that she voted for Obama in 2012. Now, how do we get rid of McConnell if we've got a female that won't own up to being a Democrat and proud of a president? That's racism in Kentucky. She'd rather say something stupid like, I have a constitutional right not to tell you who I voted for? I mean, what kind of brain is that? How could any Democrat vote for her?
Well, ergo,
There
the
goes
mindset
Kentucky.
of the people. And when people will accept that
Right.
and call it their leadership, there's something wrong with the people.
Right.
You only get what you're entitled to when you demand it. If you make no demand, there is no concession. And people are sitting back and they have a welfare mentality of, I want, but let somebody else do. They would rather be a settler than be a pioneer. You see, it's easy to be a settler.
Right. Lay
You
back
want
in
to
the-
show up after the trees are cut, the roads are paved. You just want to move in, put your feet up, do a little barbecue, sit back, belch, pass gas, and go to sleep. And that's where the American public is. Everybody is a settler, but we don't have any pioneers. And everybody wants somebody else to do the work. And people, they come to me, oh, yeah. I said, listen, I'm not running around in 42 different directions. I'm not doing it. That's not my job.
Well,
Okay? You're in your community. Get up off your big fat behind.
That's right, and do
do it
something.
yourself, because it's not happening to me. It's happening to you.
Exactly.
You can call me. I'll talk to you. But I'm not running all around the planet resolving all these issues. You're the people in that community. You need to get up and open your mouth and fight for yourself, because I will not fight for people that will not stand up for themselves.
That's
I will not
exactly
do
what
it.
Obama's doing in the Middle East. He's having the Muslims fight other Muslims. ISIS is killing other Muslims. Why shouldn't Muslims stand up for their rights? That's an
Yeah.
extreme right when it comes to being a Muslim.
When my son was over there, they were training the Iraqis. We spent people, we wasted people's lives.
Right.
We've wasted billions of dollars a day. The training. My son said, oh, these guys, they don't want to defend this. He told me, this is your country. We're not staying here.
Yeah, right.
They're on watch. They're
That's
sleeping.
right. They don't care.
They don't care enough, and this is their army.
But Malachi made it bad for everybody. Malachi was a Sedum?
Sunni Muslim.
Sunni.
Sunni. No, Malachi is Sikh,
Oh, okay.
and the ISIS is Sunni. All right? Malachi
Shia
took
and
over.
Sunni.
Shiite.
I think both.
Shiite and Sunni.
Right.
Shiite and Sunni. Malachi, being a Shiite, persecuted the Sunnis. So when the Sunnis were trained to defend Iraq, ISIS came in and they just threw their arms in the air and said, well, Malachi is head of the government, so why should we fight the other Sunnis, which was ISIS.
See, but it's not ISIS. ISIS is the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria.
But they're
ISIL.
Sunnis. But they're Sunnis.
But ISIL is the issue. ISIL is the Islamic State of, I forgot the I, but the L is 11th, which is a global. This is a global
Okay.
agenda. It's not, ISIS is local. ISIL is the global agenda of these radical Muslims. And the press keeps saying ISIS. It's not ISIS, it's ISIL. They intend to move through Syria, Iraq, Iran, Turkey. In the other direction, we have the Philippines, okay, which is the largest collection of Islam, but they are not involved in ISIL. But the Levant is to be the world dominator of all Muslims. That is their agenda. And their land, and the ISIL encompasses even Israel.
And so it's about power
That's their
and
agenda.
control. I just want to.
But see, we have a president here that's smart enough not to just jump on it and bring us into it. He promised not to put boots on the ground.
But we created the problem.
The common sense of a black man in the presidency.
Yeah. And he's stuck. We created the problem with Bush and Cheney because they had nothing to do with anything with that bogus 9/11 thing. They had nothing to do with it.
9/11 is an inside job.
Inside job. They had nothing to do with it.
Everybody said that.
And then they
Oh my
turn
goodness.
around and we assassinate the leader of a sovereign nation,
Right.
Saddam Hussein, who maintained
Sunni.
order.
A
Who
Sunni.
maintained
Sunni
order
Muslim.
in Iraq.
Right.
Matter of fact, there was so much order that Israel sent their law and medical students to Iraq to study.
Right, right.
27% of their students went to Iraq to study. So what was the problem? There was no problem because there was order. Understand, this illusion of democracy, you don't have a democracy, we live in a republic. Under a dictatorship, you have one person doing the thinking. Not so bad when you have a lot of ignorant people. See here, we have a lot of ignorant people.
That's hard to
and
say.
they live under the illusion that they are free when they're not. They live under the illusion that they can think when they don't. Because they are led to think by what they look at on television. The ignorance that is purported through the news media and through the regular television shows. The American people are some of the most, in my opinion, ignorant people when it comes to politics and world affairs.
What about the people who watch this show? We give them the truth.
Well, you can get the truth here and there, but the percentage, you're not going to get quality television on the major networks because it doesn't exist. You look on any news channel, even NBC, CNN, they show you the same looped around thing every 15 minutes, the same story
And
comes back
certain
on. That's not news.
decisions are made in the newsroom as what is going to air first
Right.
and for how long, second, third, and then what will be pulled out and the others aired. So there's a choice that someone makes for everyone.
Right. Why are
in
we
that
talking
newsroom.
about
I just
that
wanted
kid,
to say
with these
one-
entertainers? That's not news.
Yeah.
What these entertainers are doing, that's stupidness. Why don't care about that?
I wanted to just talk about the vote and young people.
Right.
And hopefully, I know that young people do watch this show.
Okay.
Because young people tell me they watch it.
Okay.
So my concern is that young people are not voting when they become a voting age.
Right.
My mother, when I turned 18, she took me, got me registered to vote, and then we went and we had lunch, and that was my little birthday celebration. We had a party later, but I got registered to vote. I did the same thing with my daughter. She met me at my job. We were in the same building as the women's
League of Women's Voters?
League of Women Voters. I told the woman I would be bringing her down. We went down. They made such a big deal. They got her registered to vote, and then we went and we had lunch. There are a lot of families where the mother, the father, and not all in the same household, and the grown children are not registered to vote. So my plea to those who are listening, and those who are listening who are connected to other people who are voting age, to make sure, just do a check. Ask who's registered. And don't ask it in a way that's defensive. Ask it in a way that is supportive. Say, hey, I got some voter registration applications, and let's get these filled out. Let's make sure our whole family and our extended family is registered. So that means if you live in St. Nicholas Projects or Lincoln Houses or wherever, that in your building, of 1,500 people in that building, there are probably half of those are adults or a fourth of those are adults, to make sure that that extended family in that building is registered to vote. Schools, the same way. In our schools, we have a lot of young people who are over the age of 18. They didn't do well in the school they're in, so they're in our school, which is a transfer school. We try to make sure that they know about voting and that they get registered to vote. There's no pressure, but at least they know that that's something that they can do, and they don't have to be afraid of it. A lot of young people don't register to vote because they don't understand the politics, they don't understand government, they don't understand how it works. So it's our job. And so my challenge is to all of the folks that are listening, to get everyone that you know registered to vote and have your young people vote registered on their birthday.
People have to realize it does make a difference.
Oh, absolutely it
definitely
does.
makes a difference.
And it makes a difference in the spirit of the young person when they vote. You know, young people that when the first run for president for Obama, I registered a lot of young people. And I told them, the ones in my neighborhood, I said, meet me at the poll in the morning. They broke night, which means that they stayed up. They stayed in the park and at 134th Street, I think it is 134th Street, PS 92, which is the polling place. And they were in the park. And a lot of them were online holding each other's places so that they can exercise their right to vote. And they did. And I mean, tears came to my eyes when they said, Miss Iesha, what took you so long? They were already there. And so, you know, it's powerful when our young people are engaged in this political process.
And one thing I think we should stress, like you said about the police officer, they have no respect for us because they see us killing each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Now we have to understand that's true as far as how they see it. All right? And you see that how we disrespect each other. I mean, how
our
can we
women,
the way
our children,
we talk and the way we rap and talk about each other,
and the
say
way we talk
N-word
to our own
each
children.
other. But we don't want anybody else saying that word to us. I mean, why do we say it to each other?
Well, I think one thing
I mean,
that
the
we,
youth. Explain.
Well, with young people, this whole gangster rap became a culture. And I don't think that people thought it was headed that way. I think the people who promoted it, the people who would not promote clean rap, but would promote gangster rap, were there to make money. It was about $1. And it also was about not creating this place where people wake up. It's about putting people back to sleep. So what young people have to understand is that when they participate in the process of creating negative language, which creates negative thoughts, which bring forth negative action. So a young man who calls a woman the B word and the H word in his song creates that image in the heads of those who listen, because everything that you hear goes in your brain, right? So then eventually the respect that you have for your mother, you begin to see her differently, your sister differently, the women that they encounter differently. And so then we have the actions that come with that. And so with that is violence. Violence. And that a lot of that music that creates the negative thinking and the negative images does negative calls to actions. That girl ain't nothing but a bee. Those bees ain't loyal. Bees refer to women. And so it creates a whole image and it creates a call to action. Knock her down, shoot him in the head. It tells the listener what to do. And eventually you have people acting out of what they hear.
But you take it back to my day, when I was a teenager, and when we were trying to be lovers, not gangsters.
When you listen to all of the music, beautiful.
Sweet talking and hey, baby, 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 please, please, please.
Right, exactly.
See, but another thing is that that
You
music promoted family.
And love.
It promoted love.
All of those songs.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T.
Respect.
Exactly.
Now there is no R-E-S-P-E-C-T.
None.
My girl. My guy.
There was a
Nothing
claim
you can do
on
to tear me, take me away from my guy.
Showing unity,
all
togetherness.
of that move towards a family unit. When you have a family, that is the core of society. A nation cannot live that does not have strong families.
That's it.
And we have gotten away from that, and we have eaten the poison
That's right. There you go. The
of this
genocide.
system and this
The
society.
genocide. The Willie Lynch
Because the
syndrome.
people that promote this stuff don't
That's-
look like you.
that's right.
The people who finance it don't look like
That's
you.
right.
And the people that are making most of the money off of it
That's
don't look
right.
like you. So we need to go back. Every now and then, the young guys at my church, we talk about different things, and I'll pull up something on the internet and listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I said, yeah, you see, you don't know the history.
That's right. All right.
These rappers are covering other people that came 50, 60 years ago.
That's right.
They're not coming up with stuff. This is where it comes from. So when we can get back to B-A-B-Y, baby, when we could get back to using terms of endearment,
Absolutely.
right.
It makes a difference.
Right.
our homes can come back together.
But
And all we have to do
but
is, like, really
nigga is a
practice
term
it.
of endearment today.
See, that's that's illusionary thinking.
Right.
See, when you don't know the meaning of a word.
Uneducated thinking because
It means low life.
because we
So
have
any color can be an N-word.
True.
absolutely.
You know?
Well, our young people don't know their history. They're not learning that in school. And they're not learning it in the home. You learn more about products and Louis Vuittons and Coach bags and who has it on sale and
Right.
all of that as opposed to
Materialism.
learning history. But one of the things I'm really proud of is Street Corner Resources, the organization of which I'm the founder. We have a music studio. So we get a chance to help
get up
guide. We can bring them. And we have
can
a
do a
piece
show
that,
up there,
Yeah, we can. We have, I welcome it.
Okay.
We have a piece, they work on projects. So they just finished a project, and you'll love it. It's My Voice When Stopped by the Police. And they use their voice
My
in rap.
voice when
My
stopped-
voice. So it's their voice, meaning
Okay.
rap or spoken word or what I call words spoken, to beats. That they created the beats, it's all original. And they wrote the lyrics, it's all theirs. And there's no cursing in the products that are produced. They don't curse in those products. So that's the project we just finished. They are currently working on a piece about New York and all of the boroughs and what's good and what's bad and what are some of the solutions. And it's just to kind of get them to think about where they live, what they can do, what they're facing, and it's also a way to have dialogue. But I think the most powerful thing is when young people learn that they can create without having to curse, because when they first come in, they say, having to use negative language. I lay the rules down. This is what you cannot do. You can't curse, you can't use the B word, the H word, you can't degrade people, none of that. And so it takes a while. But then they begin to transition, and the thoughts become so much more empowered and powerful. And so we have to bring the young people on. I had a young lady who wrote something yesterday, and she included Rosa Parks, and they made an analogy, between Rosa Parks and someone else. They talked about Michael Brown, and this is not, I didn't say they had to do it that way.
I find getting more spiritual every Monday is a youth huddle. I mean, you get some soulful, some old souls coming in there with such a beautiful spirit. It's so nice to see that in young people, man.
It's
and right on
always
National
great to
Action
see
Network.
young
Every
people.
Monday we have what we call a youth huddle.
Every
at
Monday at
106
7
West
o'clock.
145th Street, National Action Network. And
absolutely.
Iesha is one of the it's Ashley Sharpton that began it. But of
exactly.
course, you're one of the stars
Supporters,
there.
yes, and they've got a lot of the young people there.
Nonviolence, and
Yeah.
it's a great imagery. That's where we found Royce Russell, who's a
Attorney.
lawyer for Romali Graham. We were trying to get Russell here today, but can we make a call to Royce Russell and see if we can get him on the line? Maybe we can talk a little bit about the Romali Graham case, which is dear to both Graham and I, the incidents where the young man was attacked in his own home, in his own bathroom, over some smoke.
Well, there was no smoke.
But there
And
was
there
no, meaning
smoke,
weed.
but he was killed because
Right.
in his own house, mind you.
The only smoke was the gun smoke. That was the only smoke.
So can we get Mr. Russell on the phone if he can reach him? Beverly, can you make him a call? See if he can get him on the phone.
And I'm understanding that in that case, it's the officer,
Richard Haste.
Richard Hayes, is going to be brought back up on charges?
I didn't know.
Something's happening with that case.
Well, we want
Some
to
new
find out from
change has
Russell.
happened.
Well, I know they
remember
did make a
Constance
presentation
talked-
to the U.S. Attorney's Office on
Right.
it. See, because this is another reason why voting is important.
Right.
Important. Who
The
we
New York
have
State
sitting.
Legislature passed legislation which impacts black people in such a way that you don't even know about. Years ago, under the second-degree manslaughter and homicide statute, it says that it is an affirmative defense. Affirmative defense means if you commit the act, you can be exonerated of it if you're stating that you did what you did because you were in fear of your life. So police officers now are told that if you shoot somebody, if you say that I was in fear of my life,
Yeah, that's
I
it.
can't be prosecuted.
That's it.
See, that's the phrase that they're using. Imagine now, for every homicide we have in the general public, people say, well, I was in fear of my life.
Right.
See, but the police officer has a catchphrase that he can use to say that he was in fear of his life. Timothy Stansbury is gunned down by a cop who never should have been a cop. He's working in housing. He's scared because he's white. He's never been around black people. He's young. He's incompetent. He's doing a patrol in a building with a gun in his hand, walking around the building because he's white in a black neighborhood and he's scared. People like that do not belong in anybody's police department.
No.
Fear
He's
is a
waiting to
spirit,
kill someone.
and it'll motivate you in the wrong way. So Timothy now comes to the staircase. The cop is scared, and he fires a shot.
How many incidents were during your 20-year period did you run into police officers like this?
It's funny. Guys I work with got shot. My partner got shot in the face. I only, of the
Black
guys
partner?
that I knew,
Black partner?
no, it was a white partner. Shot in his face in a robbery in Brooklyn. He was off duty. He was helping an old lady who was being robbed.
Oh, we got Royce
Royce is on?
Russell's on the phone. Hi, Russ. Mr. Russell, are you on the phone? Can we get him?
Hello. I can hear
Hey, how you doing, man?
Okay.
Okay.
Did you get it on your computer too?
No, I did not. I
Okay.
did not. I just left that and try to stay simplistic, you know?
All right. So tell us about this conference call. We were talking about, I've been playing that film you brought to the National Action Network, Breathing While Black.
Oh.
We
and-
played a good piece of it today
Thank
and
you.
last week.
Well, good.
Good. So we're waiting for more. You had some new case up, right?
Right. I don't know if you most recently, early September, there was an issue at the Standard Hotel, actually. 3 African-American women, the only 3 African-American women in the establishment, one's a lawyer, one's a doctor, and one's a dance instructor, was accused of soliciting by the management there.
What?
Because they were in there and folks who were of European descent bought them some drinks, and the manager walked up to them and said, no soliciting, hurry up and finish your drink and you have to leave. Clearly,
Where were they?
There's the Standard Hotel, Standard. And so the conference call was in that regard because we plan on meeting with the Standard Hotel on Friday to try to resolve their insensitivity issues one way or the other. And so that might mean some profound protests, some awakening protests, to get them to understand that this is not something to be taken lightly.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I say that is because when we suggested that there be a meeting, they wanted to take us to some swank restaurant and sit us down and wine and dine us so we could resolve it, which clearly does not work when you're talking about serious matters.
Exactly.
So the conference call was getting lawyers of color that are helping these women voice their opinion because it's been voiced in the media, but now it's time to put the legal hat on to make sure that they get the proper representation. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm sure you'll let us know how
Graham
that.
case.
How's that coming? But
Yes.
what we wanted to talk about the Romali Graham case.
And Abdul.
And Iesha seems to think there's something new brewing. Can you give us some news on that one?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Romali Graham.
Yes, we're in the process of doing what they call discovery, right? And so,
Right.
in a case like this, there is usually a lot of discovery. There's usually a lot of investigations. There's firearm worksheets. There are reports behind reports. Brother Weatherspoon will know more the names than I do. But we're in the process of doing discovery, and we're in the process of aligning our ducks up to start conducting depositions.
But what's the new turn of events? When I talked with Constance, she said something new had happened.
Well, we had a meeting with the Attorney General, finally, where we were able to meet with their staff and meet with them.
Great.
And get an understanding as to whether or not they're putting their best foot forward, and excuse those that are left-handed, but are they putting their left foot forward? Which one? And so we walked away with the impression that they're doing their due diligence. But as I tell people before, you know, when dealing with cases of this magnitude, in any case when it comes down to police brutality and seeking some type of redress, I have a term what I call skeptically optimistic. So, you know, I got one eye open and one eye closed. The proof is in the pudding. So we should hope that there is some proof in the pudding and that the case is presented to the grand jury and an indictment
So it's
comes from
going
there.
to the grand jury.
Royce, Graham here. How you doing?
Hey.
One of the things that I've been pushing is that when these tragic cases come about, well, let me use them, when these more than tragic, they're horrific. When these cases come about, it's important that people have good legal representation. One of the problems that I see is that we have not been able to get the U.S. Attorney's Office to come into New York City to oversee, or the FBI to oversee NYPD, and that's because there has been no finding of fact in any of these murders of black men over the years, because none of these cases have gone the full length, except for maybe Sean Bell and a few others, but the officers are always exonerated, and people get settlements. And could you speak to the problem in taking a settlement as opposed to going the full distance in a civil trial?
Well, I think there will always be issues as to whether you go to trial or whether you settle a case, because all cases are factually different.
Yeah.
And not only that, every client is different. Every client has a different need and has a different mindset. So one, the attorney doesn't totally control that, right? We look at jurisdiction. You might be more favorable to go to trial in the Bronx or in Brooklyn as opposed to going to trial in Manhattan. Now, where I think the problem lies, or where I think one of the things that we can do to address this issue is that we have to participate more in the legal system. And that is becoming jurors. Because there should be no distinction between me trying a case in Manhattan and me trying a case in Brooklyn. Right? I should think that, you know, I'm going to get the same influx of people of color, who understand the relationship or the lack of relationship between law enforcement and the community. And I can feel that, don't know, but I can feel, get a sense that I'm talking to someone rather than talking at someone. So when you look at taking a case to trial and you look at getting decisions that can set the pathway for other cases to get decisions, it takes more than one legal mind to make that happen. If the client doesn't want you to move in that area, then you can't move in that area. If you know that your jurisdictional obstacles, then you need to think about that. I'm not saying you don't, but you need to think about the fact that you are trying a case in Queens, and that Queens is so diverse that when you have an Asian person on a jury, or someone that's Indian from East India, or someone that's Indian from the Punjabi, or someone that's Russian, or someone who's Albanian, their understanding of law enforcement and how it relates to them
Right.
is totally different than
Right.
our
Right.
understanding.
Right.
And so am I going to trial in Queens and trying to get those rulings that I know that we need in the long run, and am I doing that with a willing client? Because if I'm doing that with an unwilling client, then I'm subject to malpractice. Now, on the other side of the pendulum is that we don't need sellouts either, with quotes around that. That
Right.
you get a case,
Right.
and at the end of the day, you settle, and that's the end of it. And you don't even try to get rulings. You don't even try to push the pendulum one way or the other so the court can draft rulings as to discovery and what you're allowed to get and when you're allowed to get it. And, so you can move a case. And so other cases in the future can have what we call case law
Right.
to study from to then position themselves.
What's your feeling about the Bronx DA? I mean, would you? I know
He
you
knows
have.
I've addressed that. Don't put him out there professionally.
What
I
I'm
mean,
gonna-
I mean,
what
some
I'm gonna
kind
say-
words can you say?
What I'm going to say is, I'm a big fan of how Hillary Clinton answers her question. That's what I'm going to say. So if you can read between the lines on that one, then you can understand my position.
But why can't we go federal in that case?
Well, here it is. From the criminal perspective, the reason why we have state versus federal is that once you go federal, that's it, right? So
Right.
if they decide not to indict, the grand jury says, hey, look, we're not going to indict on this case. There is no other avenue. At least on the state level, if they botch it up,
Then we go
no
federal.
pun intended.
Right.
But if that happens, you still have the federal law to rely on.
But I thought that already happened.
What, that they botched it up?
That they didn't indict.
Well, they didn't indict on the state level.
They didn't.
They didn't indict on the, well, let me backtrack. Let's make sure the record is purely clear.
All right.
They did indict. A judge decided that after reading the indictment, that a definition could have been read differently, and so therefore dismissed the indictment, for which the Bronx DA's office had to go back and try to seek another indictment, for which that indictment was dismissed, and that's how we now find ourselves in federal court.
I never quite understood that.
I'm still trying to understand it myself. I mean,
Amen.
I understand what I said. I understand it from a perspective of being a former prosecutor.
Right.
I understand it from a racial, political, European, holistic way of why it happened. But I don't understand the reading when you read the instructions and you read what took place. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, we're talking about a case where the officers broke into someone's home,
Kick the door in.
kicked the door in,
Right.
didn't have a warrant,
Right.
went up to the bathroom and shot an 18-year-old
In front of a child and
in
its
front of a
grandmother.
6-year-old and a
Yeah,
grandmother.
you have to tell it like
and
it
killed
is.
her.
That's right.
Right.
I
Crazy.
mean, that is beyond belief that
Right.
somebody couldn't be indicted for that.
Right.
Out of anything we can talk about on this program.
Well, I think that and probably Royce knows this better than anyone, that lends itself, the fact that this officer was not indicted on this, lends itself to the arrogance that we see in the behavior of other officers in all of these other cases, Eric Garner and all of these other cases where police are using excessive force, abusive policing practices, and they kind of almost know that nothing's going to happen.
No, you're being very kind when you say they kind of
Well, I was
almost
trying
know.
to be
They know.
nice.
They know what the threshold is. They know that the likelihood of an attorney taking a case where someone is stopped and detained for 4 hours, the probability is low and less than an attorney taking a case where a guy has a broken eye socket. So let me do everything else but break your eye socket. So the same thing here. Police officers know what the threshold is. But what is disturbing is that the community is now picking up on that, in that those who want to be police officers, those who are not of color, are chiming in and saying, hey, look, we really don't have to value this person's life. We can really kind of do what we need to do, or do what we want to do, rather, in reference to killing someone, and say, hey, look, you know what? I was a security guard in Trayvon Martin's case. You know, I worked for the patrol of the community. You know, in the off-duty officer case I believe in Michigan, you know. I'm no longer a police officer, but, you know, I can still act in this fashion. So what you see is that the apple's not falling far from the tree in reference to people being what they call vigilantes and trying to, and relying on the law and relying on what happens to police officers, or rather what do not happen to police officers, and saying, hey, look, this is my justification.
You know, I really appreciate you answering the call today. I mean, this is the one more sensitive cases that I can think of, this from Molly Graham. Every time I see his mother, I mean, brings me to tear. Between that and Sean Bell's mother, I mean, I get to see all these cases. But this one here, we have a bathroom scene where, you know, Graham's up there with the grandmother in the bathroom. We're going to show it. We were going to show it today.
At Molly's house?
Yeah. And you can actually see the bathroom there. When you see these scenes, man, it just pulls at you. I mean, it's just unbelievable, this crap that's going on. And it takes responsible people like yourself, Russell, to make sure that this is taken care of properly. And I appreciate your call, and we only have a few minutes. And maybe one of these Wednesdays we can get you here in person. All right?
Yeah.
And thank you for calling, man.
Royce,
All right.
I'm going to call you regarding Friday.
Okay, then. Sounds good, then.
Very
Okay,
good.
we'll talk.
Royce,
Thanks.
take care. Keep up the good work.
I'll try. You know
Great.
what? We have to make sure all our people understand that there are African-American attorneys out here practicing.
That's
in this area,
right. Great.
And they
Does
need
he
to
wanna
knock
give
on our
me
door.
the
We,
all
we
right?
want to get a panel of you in at a later date.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be
You,
great.
Roger Wareham,
Oh, yeah.
from Brooklyn, Tariq, and others, you know, to come in. People
And I'm
need
going to
know who you
continue
are.
to run this Breathing While Black.
All right. Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you
All
for
right.
having me. Okay.
Thank
care,
you.
man.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
He's a powerhouse.
Yes,
he
man.
is. He's a
Him at
powerhouse.
National Action Network, he played this whole half an hour of Breathing While Black. That's where I got the copy from him. But see, these are kind of lawyers and police officers that we need to really take on and show the rest of the world that we are a family. That we have a common enemy, and that's basically how we get
Injustice.
along with each other. Really, I think that's really the secret.
Well-
If we show that family image that we need to show and project, that soul energy, that God consciousness that we all have, that spirit that's a part of us as humans, and we're the spiritual leaders, always have been. But these youth today are on the devil's path. And we know the Illuminati are just nurturing them to bring them along, to be demons, and that's where all this stuff comes from. So you out there that are mother of and all this other curse and stuff, turn to God. The God in me loves the God in you. And thank you for coming to the Gilchrist experience. And support Brother Obama. Remember, this is a brother up there. And the people, black people in the White House. And the only reason we can keep them sane is the vote. God bless. Amen. Power to the people.
Power to the people.